Good evening, this is Goldie, also known as Mr. Anecdotal, Mr. Pasty, and the Talking Head. It's Wednesday, August 17th, 2011. Remember, most importantly, I rant so you don't have to. If I don't have your email and you'd like to receive the script of each show, send your email to my new email address, which is goldierant@gmail.com. I've got to say that the pain that is caused when I see an absolute erosion of a fundamental right causes a thought in me to just give up, stop ranting, move out of the country. However, I realize that this rant allows me to stay sane, as there is no escape from the future of this world. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Rick Perry is running for president, and it's kind of funny to hear a Republican who calls himself a constitutional conservative named Neil Bortz complain about Ron Paul being a libertarian and nuts on wars. By the way, it's right now on the military channel. Killing bin Laden is on. It's on the military channel at this moment, 8 o'clock Central, on the military channel. It's okay. I give you permission to not watch me, to go ahead and watch that propaganda. Here's a brief summary of what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about Alex Jones and his conspiracy theories and why it doesn't matter whether there is a conspiracy or not, using all of our undeclared wars as my examples. I'm going to talk about Jefferson County, Alabama, and their pending bankruptcy due to selling bonds instead of raising taxes. And I will use that as an example of a lender calling in its debts, as well as relating it to the current Travis County proposal to sell $214.9 million worth of bonds. Last week I mentioned Alex Jones and his conspiracy theories regarding 9/11, fake bin Laden assassination, and inside job on the helicopter crash that killed members of SEAL Team 6, the group that killed bin Laden. The interesting thing about these conspiracy theories is that with enough information, any number of explanations with certain distinct facts can be proven to be true. It's kind of like if you put enough monkeys in a room with typewriters, they'll eventually be able to write a book over an infinite period of time. For me, the release of the photo of Obama and Hillary and the release of the documentary Killing bin Laden, 3 weeks after the release of the photo and the story, are my items of interest that raise my eyebrows on the bin Laden matter. Of course, the documentary was totally self-serving for the Obama re-election. The dumping of the body at sea is suspicious, but probably smart, so that there would be no shrine or actual on-the-ground symbol of bin Laden's body. Still, in any event, several stories and the timing of the downing of the helicopter all point to the classic structural regulatory defect run by the defense industry to continue having a presence in Afghanistan that they can legally profit from. July 27, 2011, an article in the Austin American Statesman entitled "Al-Qaeda is on verge of defeat," U.S. officials say. Just look at the title. Do you think anyone in the official Obama administration would ever make such a statement that could only hurt you? Can only hurt you to say Al-Qaeda is on the verge of defeat. Remember the old adage, if you talk, you lose. If you're silent, you win. Contrary to what they say on Fox, Obama is the smartest guy in the room. He won the debt ceiling debate. He will use it in the re-election campaign as a victory. Similarly, there is no way this would get released without a purpose, this documentary, if not just for the success message, and this article as well. Going to the article. U.S. counterterrorism officials increasingly are convinced that the killing of Osama bin Laden and 7 years of CIA drone airstrikes have pushed Al-Qaeda to the brink of collapse. The assessment reflects a widespread view at the CIA and other agencies that a relatively small number of additional blows could effectively extinguish the Pakistan-based organization that carried out the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks, an outcome seen as a distant prospect for much of the past decade. Notice the positive spin on the CIA and the CIA's use of the drones. Indeed, officials, hang on a second here. Indeed, officials said that Al-Qaeda's offshoot in Yemen is now seen as a greater counterterrorism challenge than the group's traditional base. Notice Yemen, one of our undeclared wars, more sales of arms, more backdoor support of our armed forces, subcontracted truck drivers paid $80,000 per year in Halliburton or Halliburton types, charging a commission on this subcontractor. Nevertheless, top U.S. national security officials now allude to a potential finish line in the fight against Al-Qaeda, a notion they played down before bin Laden was killed in a U.S. raid May 2nd. My God. Let's put this together. Then on August 6, 2011, Fox News reports, President Barack Obama said Saturday that the deaths of Americans in a helicopter crash in Afghanistan are a reminder of the extraordinary price the U.S. military is paying in the decade-long Afghan war. Insurgents shot down a U.S. military helicopter during fighting in eastern Afghanistan, killing 30 Americans, most of them belonging to the same elite unit as the Navy SEALs who killed former al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden, U.S. officials said Saturday. It was the deadliest single loss for American forces in the decade-old war against the Taliban. One current and one former U.S. official said that the dead included 25 Navy SEALs from SEAL Team 6, the unit that carried out the raid in Pakistan in May that killed bin Laden. They were being flown by a crew of the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. Both officials spoke on condition of anonymity because families are still being notified. A total number of 38 people died in the crash, killing 7 Afghans and 1 interpreter. Then, August 11, 2011, in the Austin American-Statesman, U.S., this is it, quotes, U.S., Taliban who took down helicopter killed by Lolita C. Baldor and Pauline Jelinek. International forces killed the Taliban insurgents responsible for shooting down a U.S. helicopter and killing 38 U.S. and Afghan forces over the weekend. But they are still seeking the top insurgent leader they were going after in Saturday's mission, the top American commander in Afghanistan said Wednesday. Notice they say the insurgents, plural, and that they specifically say that they still need to go after the guy they're originally going after. We need to stay the course, stay there, keep spending money, keep killing Afghani babies. Back to the article. In a separate statement Wednesday, the military said the Monday strike killed the insurgent who fired the rocket-propelled grenade at the helicopter. All right, let me repeat that. In a separate statement Wednesday, the military said the Monday strike killed the insurgent who fired the rocket-propelled grenade at the helicopter. They are saying they got the guy. The guy. Are you kidding me? Going back to coincidence and conspiracy theory, there are enough facts out there stringing together these events to make them look suspicious. But if you actually look at the facts that are released, the message is extremely clear. As far as it being a conspiracy, it is just corporations maximizing, legally under the Citizens United case. The legislators hand out our taxpayer dollars, also known as a commons, for their own personal benefit. So I won't say, like Alex Jones, that bin Laden was not really killed the way they say, and that the helicopter downing was a part of the plan to silence those SEAL team members who know the real story. But if you take a tiny step away from that group of trees to try and look at the whole forest, an article from the August 11, 2011 Austin American-Statesman by Jeffrey Gettleman, Mark Mazzetti, and Eric Schmidt gives you a glimpse of one side of the forest. U.S. outsourcing to contractors for Somali conflict. Private security firms surreptitiously hired to train rebels. Over the past year, the United States has quietly stepped up operations inside Somalia, U.S. officials acknowledge. The CIA, which largely finances Somalia's spy agency, has covertly trained Somali intelligence operatives, helped build a larger base at Mogadishu Airport, large base. Somalis call it the Pink House for the reddish hue of its buildings, or Guantanamo for its ties to the U.S., and carried out joint interrogations of suspected terrorists with their counterparts in a ramshackle Somali prison. So we are torturing over there. In a country where we have not declared war, we are funding, and I would guess training, their intelligence services to torture. Of course, these private firms, one of which is reported in the article as Bancroft Global Security Development, a private U.S. security company that the State Department has indirectly financed to train African troops who have fought a pitched battle against al-Shabaab, the Somali militant group allied with al-Qaeda. They are using taxpayer dollars and private security companies to just go spend the money, build bases, torture people, and kill babies. Quotes, "We do not want an American footprint or boot on the ground," said Johnny Carson, the Obama administration's top State Department official for Africa. But many U.S. officials, believe a piecemeal approach won't be enough to suppress al-Shabaab over the long run, close quotes. Yeah. Back to the article. In interviews, more than a dozen current and former U.S. officials and experts describe an overall U.S. strategy in Somalia that has been troubled by a lack of focus and internal battles over the past decade, close quotes. So we need to increase the U.S. presence and spending in Somalia. Same corporations, same legislators, same spending of taxpayer money for the benefit of the shareholders of these corporations and the politicians and bureaucrats, regulators, that are anywhere in the food chain of money from each of these undeclared wars. Check out the last paragraph of the article, which gives you a Hobson's choice, or no choice at all. Lauren Plock, an East Africa expert at the Congressional Research Service, said the Obama administration faces many of the same problems that had vexed its predecessors, balancing the risks of an on-the-ground presence against the risks of using third parties to carry out the U.S. strategy in Somalia. Close quotes. All right, again. Balancing the risks of an on-the-ground presence against the risks of using third parties to carry out the U.S. strategy in Somalia. This means that the U.S. strategy is a presence in Somalia. When did we declare war there? When did Congress debate propagating death in Somalia with arms, paid for by the taxpayers? I don't remember. Looking back at the story of bin Laden's lynching, which appears to be fake to conspiracy theorists like Alex, the story of the claim of success, actually saying they were on the verge of defeat against al-Qaeda on July 27, 2011, the downing of the helicopter on August 6, 2011, the story that we killed the guy that brought the helicopter containing SEAL Team 6 down with a rocket-propelled grenade on August 11, 2011, and the story of Somalia military presence being a given as U.S. policy, we're seeing the forest, not just a bunch of trees. Also, our message, my message, does not sound completely crazy like Alex's. It reminds me of that girl I've spoken about before who said, if you did not know that 9/11 was an inside job, you're an idiot. I, of course, replied that it was more interesting to see what those in power did with the 9/11 catastrophe. Also, people listen to you a little longer if you don't actively say that 9/11 was an inside job. You may remember a few weeks back, in one of my rants about the publication of the photo showing bin Laden's lynching, I said that this would be the worst thing ever for a litany of bad acts that our government does in our name. Torture, defense spending on drones, killing babies, the Patriot Act, surveillance, and privacy, among other things. I stated that they would use the idea promoted in the book and movie 1984, where the enemy is Goldstein. And I posited that from what I had been seeing in the news and on Fox, the new Goldstein would be Anwar al-Awlaki, and that having killed bin Laden would have become irrelevant except as some type of victory for the U.S. against terrorism. On Fox.com on August 15, 2011, there appeared an article confirming my suspicions. Not just suspicions, suspicions. Exclusive. Congress to probe suspected connection between Anwar al-Awlaki and 9/11 by Catherine Herridge. Published August 15, 2011. The House Homeland Security Committee has initiated an investigation into the radical Muslim cleric Anwar al-Awlaki and whether he was an overlooked key player in the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, a letter from the committee chairman to Attorney General Eric Holder says. The 3-page letter, obtained exclusively by Fox News, makes the case that a decade after the worst terrorist attack on U.S. soil, the full story of 9/11 has not been told. This congressional investigation will seek to determine, here's a list. 1. To what extent Anwar al-Awlaki, wittingly or unwittingly, facilitated the plot of the 9/11 hijackers, and 2. To what extent al-Awlaki was an al-Qaeda operative offering support to acts of terrorism prior to 9/11. The letter to Holder, sent by Republican Representative Peter King, Islamophobe, by the way, of New York on May 26th, confirms that investigators believe the American cleric's contacts with 3 of the 5 hijackers on Flight 77, which slammed into the Pentagon, were more than a series of coincidences, but rather evidence of a purposeful relationship. Given the greater collection of intelligence and integration of pertinent data since the attacks of 9/11, I believe that al-Awlaki may have played greater roles in the terrorist attacks of 9/11, as well as other terrorist plots. than those of which we have been previously aware, King writes. Accordingly, I request the full assistance of the Department of Justice in carrying out this inquiry. Close quotes. The House Committee investigation is seeking all documents in the possession of the Department of Justice, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or any other DOJ entity or component that pertain to al-Awlaki and 7 other individuals, including his associate in San Diego, Modar Abdullah, and his associate in Virginia, Ayad al-Rababa, who directly aided the hijackers. In addition, it is seeking files, reports, analysis, assessments, memoranda, notes, and presentation in all forms that are related to long-closed FBI investigations of al-Awlaki in 1999. In that case, the San Diego Terrorism Task Force was investigating an alleged link between al-Awlaki, Osama bin Laden, and a known procurement agent named Ziad Khalil, who had previously purchased a satellite phone for bin Laden. The tone of the letter and the materials being sought suggest that the congressional investigation believes there is compelling evidence that al-Awlaki may have been al-Qaeda from the beginning, and that his rise to an operational commander in the al-Qaeda affiliate in Yemen, considered the most active, was not a surprise, but rather a logical progression. Okay, that's the end of the article. Okay, so he is and was a bad guy, and he is still alive, and we need to go after him in Yemen or Pakistan or Somalia or Iraq or Iran or Afghanistan, or on my mobile phone or yours. He is the new bin Laden, the new Goldstein, the new enemy of the never-ending war, of the taxpayers versus the shareholders of those corporations that benefit from these expenditures. That's the real war. I know that I went a long way around, but it seems that there is a consistent thread in all of this. We need to spend taxpayer money for arms and governments over there. This does not seem to make sense at a time when we are laying off teachers and wheeling people in wheelchairs out into the streets, at least in Rick Perry's Texas, due to dramatic budget cutting led by the Tea Party, and I'm not saying budget cutting is a bad thing at all. It doesn't make sense when we see all of the funds being spent in all of these other countries. I guess most people in this country do not read anything anymore. Although I must say that today at a municipal golf course here in Austin, a 15-year-old kid overheard me talking to a buddy about my rant. He asked me, was it a podcast or what is it? And I said it's on Ustream. And it turns out he was aware of Citizens United. He was 15. I was shocked. In any event, there is an additional impediment to determining how much is being spent, as well as the profits being made on these undeclared but congressionally approved wars. There was an article in the Austin American-Statesman dated August 17, 2011 entitled Price of Wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, a Puzzle for Cost Cutters by Nancy A. Youssef. When congressional cost cutters meet later this year to decide on trimming the federal budget, the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq could represent juicy targets. But how much do they cost the U.S. taxpayer? Nobody really knows. Congress has allotted $1.3 trillion for war spending through fiscal year 2011 just to the Defense Department. There are long Pentagon spreadsheets that outline how much of that was spent on personnel, transportation, fuel, and other costs. In a recent speech, President Barack Obama signed the wars at $1 trillion price tag. But all those numbers are incomplete. Besides what Congress appropriated, the Pentagon spent an additional unknown amount from its $5.2 trillion base budget over the same period. According to a recent Brown University study, the wars and their ripple effects have cost the United States $3.7 trillion, or more than $12,000 per American. On Tuesday, Defense Secretary Leon Panetta said that the large new cuts in defense spending, triggered if the congressional debt limit panels fail to agree, would terribly weaken national security. Panetta said the Pentagon is prepared to make $350 billion in cuts over the next 10 years. But he warned of dangers to the national defense if bigger reductions are required. What he meant to say was that any cuts to the defense budget would have an ambiguous effect on our national security, but that it would definitely cut into the profits of those corporations that supply the Defense Department and our armed forces, and might have an effect on his future job prospects at one of these corporations. That's what he meant to say. Separately, but on a related note, Maureen Dowd wrote an op-ed piece August 16, 2011 in the New York Times entitled, Power to Mitt Romney, Power to the Corporation. While it is a piece about Mitt, she steers it to the important issue of how it is that we are cutting funding for schools over here, but spending in undeclared wars over there. benefiting many corporations based, interesting term, over here. Des Moines, Iowa. This is Marindown. I saw Mitt Romney's hair move. No, really, I did. We were standing amid the soybean and cornfields in rural Iowa, and a breeze lifted some of his salt and pepper mane out of its Brill cream perfection. At the fair, Romney, whose net worth is between $190 million and $250 million, once again went manly by flipping a pork chop on a grill and facing down hecklers worried about cuts in Social Security. Okay, here's where the getting gets good. When a man in the audience yelled that corporations should be taxed more, Romney replied, "Corporations are people, my friend. Corporations are people." Let's think about that for a moment. Mitt Romney believes that corporations are people. Is Mitt a constitutional conservative, a Tea Partier, or is he just a man running for president, maximizing under the existing laws? Back to Maureen's op-ed. Give the Stormin' Mormon, as Neil Cavuto approvingly called him on Fox News, credit. Never has the traditional Republican doctrine been so succinctly explained. Of the corporation, by the corporation, for the corporation. Corporations who need corporations are the luckiest corporations in the world. Power to the corporation. Romney may not have realized that he was articulating the same fundamental concept of the American right that Justice Antonin Scalia propounded in the Citizens United case, when the Supreme Court opened the way to super PACs and a flood of surreptitious new donations in politics. A former official at Bain Capital, Romney's old private equity firm, admitted recently that he was the one who anonymously gave $1 million to a pro-Mitt super PAC, legally. The association of individuals in a business corporation, Scalia wrote in his concurring opinion, cannot be denied the right to speak on the simplistic ground that it is not an individual American. The backdoor money infused by Karl Rove, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the Koch brothers, and others elected a slew of radical Republicans, close quotes. Maureen Dowd has it right. Of course, she does dislike Republicans big time. Maureen Dowd, she's got it right. The problem, of course, is that no one except the New York Times readers hear her. I have to ask, why is that? Why is it that constitutional conservatives and Tea Partiers do not speak the sacred words, Citizens United, in every other sentence? It's welfare. However, I disagree with her implicit assertion that this case only benefits Republicans, as it benefits Democrats as well. Just look at the continuation of the drug war, even following a Democratic Party takeover in 2008. I do agree that the Citizens United problem is usually spurred by Republicans. Hang on. Hence the need for a constitutional amendment overriding Scalia's and other Republican appointees' pro-corporation tilt. This case, together with the list of places where we are conducting undeclared wars, show the real conspiracy. The legal conspiracy of corporations donating legislators who tell government workers, armed forces, where to spend other people's money, taxpayer money. It's an open conspiracy. It's legal. You may remember a few months ago I talked about the Austin Public Library overrun, and it was a $30 million overrun, and the lies put forth by our elected officials as to whether bonds increase taxes or not. They do. However, the key to municipal bonds and the people voting for them is that there is a vague idea as to how much your taxes will go up. It's only a vague idea when the bonds are used due to insufficient tax revenues. The first main reason that bonds are used. The other main reason that bonds are used is so that marginal projects can get done that would not otherwise get the support of taxpayers if tax revenues were the method of repayment. It is a backdoor way to get things done by bamboozling the taxpayers. There was an article in the Austin American-Statesman regarding Jefferson County, Alabama, dated July 29, 2011, entitled Alabama County's Choice, Bankruptcy or Give Away the Farm. Alabama's largest county has 1 week to decide whether to file for the largest ever municipal bankruptcy or take a deal from Wall Street to settle more than $3 billion in debts linked to a massive sewer project stained by corruption. Sewer rates will rise one way or the other for the 658,000 residents in Jefferson County, officials say. It's just a matter of how much. The county, where rates already have jumped more than 300% in recent years, is Alabama's economic hub and includes the state's largest city, Birmingham. A court-appointed receiver recommended a rate hike of 25%, or about a $9 increase on a monthly bill. But Commissioner Jimmy Stevens said he hoped to keep the increase much lower. The county's settlement offer last week would erase more than $1 billion of its debt, with the promise of repaying the remaining amount through a combination of modest sewer rate increases and loans. Loan payments skyrocketed in 2008 because of increasing interest rates as global credit markets struggled, and the county could no longer afford to repay the money. Again, if you remember my rant on what might happen if a municipality or a country defaulted on its debts, I had posited, that if China had called in its loans, that the foreclosure that would occur would include the use by the lender of assets of the municipality or country. I got further and said that I was afraid that a lender would come in and force changes to, for example, environmental laws to allow more pollution of the commons. In other words, if China decided to come in and foreclose and say, I want all your coal, they would change the environmental laws by donations to the legislators. Or they would just make it a condition of extending the debt. In the case of Jefferson County, the borrower, the county, is being forced to raise rates to where the lender says. And if you'll notice, are being forced to take out more loans to pay off the prior lender, for which there will be loan fees. Getting back to our local county, Travis County, there was a story in the August 17, 2011 Austin American-Statesman, written by Susana Gonzalez, entitled $214.9 million bond vote set. This shows the complete lack of understanding of basic economics and an act of putting on the blinders to the results of all of this spending, as this happened in Alabama. Travis County Commissioners voted unanimously Tuesday to call a $214.9 million bond referendum in November. Voters will see two propositions on the ballot: $132.8 billion in road and drainage projects and $82.1 million in park projects, amounts that include inflation costs and expenses associated with issuing bonds. County officials have said that taxes will increase if voters approve the bonds. All right. It's too early to say by how much. Bullshit. It is not too early to say, in that we estimated that each $100 million of bonds added $18 per year per household. This is when we were doing that $400 million, $300 million courthouse. This number will not ever appear in a story or on the ballot, which is where it needs to appear. Remember, my Tea Party friend came up with that proposal, that every time you had a bond issue, you would show how much each household pays. If that did appear, those bonds would not pass. But I'm not going to say I guarantee you they're going to pass. The Parks proposal will pass, and we've talked about the slight problem with buying land and buying more commons. I'm not sure where I stand on that. That's always a problem when they're buying land and setting it aside, because maybe that's a good use of our taxpayer money. But roads, drainage, who cares? We don't have the money. Don't do it. I don't know if you ever watched Neil Cavuto on Fox. He's on Fox Business News and Fox Regular the week of August 10th, 2011. He talked about the importance of the housing market, which is really strange because he's a big budget cutter guy. But he talked about the importance of the housing market, and then he called for a refinance of every mortgage. I was like, what? I had an argument with my dad back in March of 2009. You remember, Dow at 6,500. He called for an extension of all mortgages to 40 years, basically a refinance. I had asked him who would pay for the refinancings. He asked me what I meant, and I replied that it costs money for a refinance, and why are the lenders being stuck with the tab? He had no answer. Similarly, Cavuto, who is anti-spending, is apparently okay with the federal government picking up the tab for billions of dollars in refinancing costs. As usual, spending is bad. unless it's the kind of spending that you like. On August 13th, 2011, Fox aired a special, Answers from the Abyss, August 13th. It also occurred on the day of the Iowa Republican straw polls last Saturday, and the day that Rick Perry announced his run for president. The Dow finished up for the week, and we were talking about an abyss. I just saw on Hannity on Tuesday, August 16th, 2011, that a Rasmussen poll said that Rick Perry is at the top of the Republican heap. I had said 3 days ago that there would be no polls reported by the Perry campaign for as long as possible, which turned out to be the day that Rick Perry was leading the Republican pack. Now, my buddy up in Connecticut is getting onto this, and he's been giving me credit for having predicted that Rick Perry was going to run for president. All I said was that Rick Perry would not run for president unless he was going to win. And watch. And this is just fun stuff, okay? We've talked about the importance of Supreme Court appointees, and that makes your decision on who to elect for president very, very simple. But you should watch the Republicans and the Republican talking heads, and Rush, and Neil Bortz, and Hannity, just slapping Ron Paul. They're kind of dumb. They really need to co-opt him into the party, because he is a libertarian. He's anti-war. He's anti-spending, big time. He wants to get into the Federal Reserve and see what's going on there. He wants full disclosure. We talked about that in the past. But in any event, it's going to be interesting to see. He did pretty well in Iowa, but they just talked it away. When he does not get the nomination, because Rick Perry is going to get the nomination, unless he withdraws for some thing they dig up. When he withdraws, if he decides to run as an independent or as a libertarian, that's the only way Rick Perry could lose. That's my current prediction. So I was reading the July 2011 Tierra Grande. It's the Texas Broker newsletter put out by Texas A&M, which means it has facts in it. And there was a panel of commercial real estate people talking about the current problems in commercial real estate. I've talked in the past about the theory of extend and pretend, which is happening, which is the process of regulators allowing banks to keep bad loans on the books and not have the fire sales and bank failures that occurred in the last big recession of 1990 and 1992. One comment is especially telling. A guy named Candle said, the $350 billion question today is how long is the government going to keep the accounting rules the way they're currently set? And this is what he said. If they change the rules back to the way they were before to recognize losses, 1,200 to 2,000 banks might fail immediately. Wow. There is no way that will happen before the 2012 election. And it may never happen. And that's the main thing that we are learning from both this rant and the past debate over the debt limit. It's all election. June 27th, 2011, my stepfather Rich died. My Connecticut friend and I were discussing an item he had read about Saudi Arabia and women not driving and Hillary Clinton going to that country as Secretary of State. I stopped listening, sorry buddy, and started thinking about that as well as relating it to a book I'm reading by Stephen Johnson, Where Good Ideas Come From, talking about a concept called the adjacent possible. So I knew that my mind was percolating because my friend was bringing up a rant issue on how we treat different countries differently. I started thinking that we needed a teaching tool, a simple one that puts every country, and this is a teaching tool for school, it puts every country on a continuous line with one end being, we nuke you because we can, as in Somalia, and the other end being, we give you everything because we owe you everything, as in China. A new teaching tool for my class on modern American history. A new idea that came out of the adjacent possible from my friend in Connecticut. Each country, and I know it wouldn't be a piece of paper, but each country would be a sheet of paper. For example, China would be red, and you would add whatever interest they have to us to the description of that country, and you would move the countries around using categories like civil rights, discrimination, oil, minerals, lending ability, purchasing ability. It would explain everything. Thank you, my Connecticut friend. a little joke for you. Junior's pool is so hot. How hot is it? It's so hot, when you pee in the pool, it lowers the temperature. That's all there is today. I want to thank our sponsors, all of which support this form of conversation, but not necessarily the content. PianoByAngelo.com, Angelo Limbesis, who teaches and plays keyboards all over Austin. ZetaDesign.com for all of your decorative painting needs. You can make anything look like anything. AustinAreaPlumbing.com for all of your Austin plumbing problems. www.ticoadventurelodge.com, a small hotel in Samara, Costa Rica. CNC Surf School in Samara at www.cncsurfsamara.webs.com. La Vela Latina, a great sunset bar and restaurant in Samara. Ambar Tequila at www.santospirits.com, an extremely smooth tequila. Another cool 4-unit green hotel in Samara called The Logan at www.thelogansamara.com. And of course, the Delicate Genius in Houston, who is a platinum sponsor. Thanks for coming out.